Okay, it is started.
All right. Welcome to today's edition of Kubernetes Thursday community meeting. Today is January 17th, depending on where you are in the world. I guess most of the world today, or right now rather. My name is Paris Pittman. I work at Google. I'm also the co-chair of the Special Interest Group for Contributor Experience. I'm biased. It's my favorite. And today we are going to have our regular show of amazingness. We'll have a demo. We'll also do release updates. We'll go into a contributor tip of the week. And then we also have CLI on the line. And we have Sean with us today. We'll do some announcements, have a quick steering committee update, and then also we'll finish up with some shout outs. So first things first, we are going to probably have time for questions today on most sections. If you do have a question and someone else is speaking, just go ahead and either raise your hand or let us know in chat so that we can call on you and that we're not all stumbling over each other to speak. So first things first, what we're going to do is the demo. Omer, you are on Camus. Why don't you kick it off?
Hi everyone, my name is Omer. And today I want to share with you something we built, a new solution for sorry, it's hard to talk and press on the right button. Okay, so I want to share today Camus is a new solution we built for secret encryption decryption on Kubernetes, and it's available on GitHub, so you can check it out while I'm speaking. But first, I want to answer why do we even need a new tool? Like, there are a lot of solutions existing out there, and they're all pretty good. So I want to start with specifying that we all use secrets on a regular basis, and usually these kind of things are highly sensitive. So this is why we might want to protect them with one-way encryption, meaning once they're encrypted, there are no way to decrypt them back. This allows to reduce the attack surface. And also because it's critical flow in how we develop application, and this is something we do on a regular basis, it's important that it will be easy and seamless to do that. And the second thing is that GitOps gains a lot of popularity, and where I work at Sullivan, we are working a lot with GitOps and doing a lot of things with it. And it's basically because devs are familiar with it, and it has built-in capabilities that help us do things better, like built-in audit and review capabilities. Sorry, I'm a bit excited. And it's very native to do that with Kubernetes using Kubernetes manifest files. You just put them on Git, and magic happened using GitOps. But it's all become a problem when you get to secrets. All the existing solutions to manage secrets on Kubernetes, and especially the native Kubernetes objects, are not something that work intuitively and securely with GitOps. It all started with the basic Kubernetes object that we just can't commit to source control because in the YAML file, the representation is in base 64. So this is why many people ending up using Sealed Secret. Sealed Secret is a great solution because it gives you a way to encrypt secrets, so you can commit them to source control and have good GitOps with your secrets, but it has some challenges. First, it has challenges for security point of view. There is one key pair used to encrypt all the secrets, and it's stored on the cluster itself. And it has the same challenges we have with Kubernetes secrets, both with creating them, which can be a bit mess. Like if you don't want to work with environment variables, so usually people ending up with creating a configuration file, base 64 it or encrypt it with Sealed Secret, and then have it in one key in the secret. And we didn't like all the existing solutions, and none of them was a good fit for us and not something we feel is secure and robust enough for us to use. So we understand that we need to build a new solution, which we called Camus. Camus is a word in Hebrew. I'm from Israel, so I'm also speaking Hebrew. And it means something that is secret or hidden. And now I want to show you a quick demo of Camus, how it works. The demo I'm going to show is also available on the repository under this path, so you can run it yourself on your machine. So let's start. I have a Kubernetes cluster on my machine on Minikube, and I have 5 pods running right now, 4 belonging to Camus, 2 to the crypto, 2 to encrypto. It's 2 different APIs, and one of the example. Let's do port forward so I can view the example application. And this is the example app. I wrote it in PHP just to emphasize that Camus can work with any language. It's not coupled to a specific language, and it was really easy to support it. And basically, this application just read secrets from this path and print them to screen, because this is usually what you do with secrets, you print them to screen. So let's see how we can provide secret to these applications using Camus. So to provide a secret to this application using Camus, the way Camus works is that you encrypt secrets for a specific application. And we identify application using the service account using by default. So I'm going to find what is the service account used by this application, and you can find it here. And now all I need to do is I need to use Camus CLI. I'm going to run it inside the cluster, and I'm going to tell it encrypt, and I want to encrypt something, let's call it super secret for this service account. And the service account is in the namespace default. And I'm going to give it Camus URL, and I'm going to tell Camus to let me work with insecure URL, because by default, the CLI will not let me work with insecure URL. And I forgot to put the URL here. Okay, so this is basically going to run a pod inside the cluster. And of course, for some reason now it's not working. Anyway, if it was working, what I was getting is something like that. This is an encryption secret. Can you still hear me? Cool. So this is an encrypted secret. And this is something I can commit to source control and do whatever I want with it. So I need to put this secret. And the next thing I need to do is I need to add a Camus init container. So let's uncomment it. The init container basically read the encrypted secret from the config map, decrypt them to a configuration file that my application can mount. And now, after committing to source control, I can do kubectl apply -f dot, and of course I need to save, and this will run the deployment. And now when the deployment completed, I can do port forward again. Of course, it's not working. Okay, but if it was working, we will be able to see here the content of the file. I have a recording of the whole demo, but I don't see it now. Okay, it just takes time to start. Cool. So you can see that we get it, and this is the decrypted version of this content. So now I want to take some questions. I figure it might be easier than giving more content, and I don't have a lot more time. So if someone has questions, this is now a good time. If not, I finished my demo, and I will be happy to chat with anyone else after on Camus and how it can help and how it's different from existing solutions.
Thanks for the demo. Questions?
Yeah, where does this store its secrets? Where are the secrets being stored?
Okay, so this is a great question. Camus handles encryption, and it has support for pluggable encryption and decryption solution. So currently we are supporting 3 options. The first is AES with like in-memory key, which is the most insecure. And we also support Azure Key Vault and GCP KMS, which are more secure. And we want to add support for AWS KMS. We just didn't get to it yet. But the support for Azure/GCP give you HSM protections for your keys, which make it really secure and safe to use, and make it a lot harder to get the encryption keys and actually decrypt the data without Camus.
Right. But where are these encrypted keys being physically stored?
That's what I said. We are storing them either on Azure Key Vault or on GCP KMS. Camus interact with one of them, send them the data to encrypt, get it back encrypted, and return it back to the CLI, and the same work for decryption.
Anybody else? All right, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you very much for coming at the last minute as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, next up is Aaron Krickenberger with CIG Beard and the release team.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron of CIG Beard. Hopefully my internet doesn't skip out on me today. I am your 1.14 release lead. Today's cat t-shirt is the many phases of the cat because we as a release team go through many phases in the release life cycle. I will share my screen, but you can follow along if you'd like by clicking the same links that I do in the meeting notes. So we're going to share this screen. Awesome. I shared the right screen the first try. This looks really tiny to you, so now it looks larger. So we are at week 2 for 1.14. That link takes you to the schedule for 1.14. The schedule basically is laid out as such. The next upcoming milestones are that since we are in week 2, we're going to be finalizing the team. And enhancements freeze will be coming at you at the start of week 4, January 29th. We cut Alpha 1.14 Alpha 1 on Tuesday, January 15th, as you can see by this issue. Thank you to Hannes, our branch manager, for doing that. We were reminded that it is difficult to actually create Debian or RPM files when cutting alpha or beta releases because there's only like one channel out there. Technical details, basically. But we as a release team are interested in trying to solve the problem of cutting Debian and RPM files for every release that we cut, alpha and beta, and I believe there are some folks from SIG Cluster Lifecycle who are interested in stepping up to help out. So we will continue to track that as we go forward. If you are interested in this, please come on down to SIG Release. Kind of tangential to this, like we talked about creating some sub-projects in SIG Release, and the release engineering sub-project is one of them. So on the release team, like I need a point person to cut a build. But I think how we improve the process of cutting a build and what tools we use is something that a whole bunch of people could help out with. Since this is week 2, we are out gathering enhancements. You may have seen myself or Claire Lawrence or Ben Elder at some of your SIG meetings this week. And this was in an effort to remind everybody that we pay attention to what Kubernetes enhancements issues are in the 1.14 milestone. We're also going around and kindly asking everybody to make sure that each one of these are associated with the KEP, and then that KEP has within it some graduation criteria for what it means for this particular enhancement to land as alpha, beta, or stable. And then we further are trying to suss out what does that actually mean. So this is kind of an iterative, bumpy process, so I appreciate all of your patience as we work through that. We also have an enhancements tracking spreadsheet for this, if you'd like to take a look at this. All of these are linked off of the release schedule that was linked in the meeting notes and is in the SIG release repo. Let's see here. So just on the subject of everything must have a KEP, if you're confused, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Based on the feedback I have gotten, very first SIG we talked to about this week was SIG Apps, and Phil Whitrock asked a bunch of really great questions and then expressed his feedback in the form of a PR. I love it when people in the open source community do this. So we're going to take a look at updating the KEP template to include these release checklists and these graduation criteria. I will be chatting with SIG Architecture about what they would like to see in this at the meeting that follows this. And I've also talked with SIG PM about them owning sort of the stewardship of the KEP process. I figure a bunch of project and product and program managers, whichever P you want to call PM, probably all have a lot more experience with being organized than I do. And so there is a board out there that Stephen Augustus has put together. Bunch of tasks for people to help out on. I think the biggest one that we can do is to try and continue pushing us towards KEPs and away from design proposals. So look for more information on all of that. I believe that that is everything that I have to discuss today, so I will stop sharing my screen. Do you all have any questions? Okay, cool. I can talk to the patch release stuff if nobody else here can. Okay, so just to move forward on the patch release stuff, I won't share my screen for this, but there is a schedule that's linked in the meeting notes. We're going to try doing this thing where we call out when we want to cut the next patches for the next versions of Kubernetes. So you can click that link to find out that information. There was also a lot of discussion at the CIG release meeting this week about whether it made sense to cut another patch release for version 10, technically speaking. Version 10 is beyond the 3 supported versions of Kubernetes boundary. However, we do just still happen to have the CI infrastructure in place to allow us to cut a release of 110 if there were a situation that called for it. And so we talked about what criteria we might use to decide, yes, it's worth cutting a release of Kubernetes, even if it's outside of our support window. Jordan Liggett did a great job of articulating and summarizing the discussion that led us to agree that, yes, we should cut that release. I don't know when that's going to happen, but this was to catch a regression that was introduced in an earlier patch release. So if you're still running a 110, look for that. The PR is linked in the meeting notes.
All right. Last call for questions for anything to do with the release. All right. Go team.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. All right. Next up is our usual contributor tip of the week, piece of the fun. I have a good one this week, and it has to do with mentoring. We usually have a tip that has to do with our lovely automation or something that has to do with GitHub. But today we are going to talk about people. We do have many mentoring programs. I'm focusing on the ones that are current, that are live. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. And of course, Zoom chat as well. First one is Meet Our Contributors, which is a monthly YouTube series that happens on the first Wednesday of every month. The link in there, if you are following along in the agenda, has the playlist for our past series. We have a panel of mentors who are current contributors of many different levels, meaning some of them just had a few PRs, all the way up to maintainers and founders. And this gives us a really awesome breadth of experience. And we take questions from the Meet Our Contributors Slack channel. It's a really great time. It's about an hour. The questions vary from very specific to, for instance, like, why is my test flaking, all the way to extremely broad, like, hey, how did you get into open source? Or how do you combat burnout? And some other really serious questions that you would typically ask a mentor. This is Scalable Mentoring. We have had over 1,000 unique views. Some of our more popular episodes have to do with code-based tours. We had one where a contributor gave a very quick, on-the-fly code-based tour of Kubernetes, which was really awesome, and that's our highest watched video to date. And we have 2 sessions for that that happen on, again, the first Wednesday of the month. That's 3:30 p.m. and 9 p.m. That's UTC. Check your local time. And we actually split out 2 sessions. One session is always a steering committee AMA, and this is really great for current contributors, of course, new contributors too, but current contributors can ask questions like, hey, why did the structure change? Or what, somebody define what exactly a subproject is for me. All kinds of governance questions, how they got involved. It's a really good time. And then the other session is just a regular panel of mentors. So that's Meet Our Contributors. The next that we have going on that we're currently recruiting for is Google Summer of Code. A lot of our top contributors have come from this program, so it's very worthwhile, and we have fun doing it. CNCF submitted our application, and we're aiming for as many as Google will give us. And so if you have an interesting project for your SIG, or you can mentor, doesn't necessarily need to be both. Email was sent from Nikita to Kubernetes, the Kubernetes dev mailing list today. Please look at that and then adhere to the deadlines. You'll also get reminders on this call, as well as all the other 800 million bajillion channels that we have for you for communication. New contributor workshop. This is an awesome way for us to get new contributors who are both new and not new to open source. We tack this on to all of our CoopCons now, specifically the contributor summits. And that's also a way for our current contributors to see and talk to new contributors that are coming in the door as well. The link that's in, oh, actually, I did not put the link in there. I will put the link in there to the YouTube playlist for the new contributor workshop for Seattle. If somebody's listening right now and can find the playlist link, that would be awesome. Pop that in there for me. But this is great work that's been done by Gwyn Sanger, Josh Burkus, Tim Pepper, so many others in contributor experience who have really just walked so many miles to try to have an interactive experience for new contributors, because we do have automation and CI that other projects don't have, and this gives them an experience to actually go through their first PR and things along those lines. And the videos are great to give other new contributors who ask you, hey, how do I start contributing to Kubernetes? It's a great 101. We're actually going to be doing a sort of 201 class. So like in college terms, like the next one over the one-on-one for some intermediate contributors. And we've onboarded over 200 new contributors last year. A lot of those were also at Shanghai too, and that was something that I know a lot of folks that were planning that have never done. So it was a great experience there. Also the release team. The release team is one of the backbone mentoring programs that we have within Kubernetes. Aaron is waving at you right now. Recently, the release team did put out a survey. The survey link is in the agenda. It's just not highlighted as a hyperlink. I will do that right now. And this is a way to get a unique experience into the look of all of the moving parts of Kubernetes. Many people release things on a quarterly basis here, so you get to see key players, owners, maintainers, and that's how a lot of our contributors come in. They get to see the lay of the land, and they get to see where they can fill in gaps. So that's it for me for mentoring programs. Next time, I hope to talk about some other ones that are being built that have to do with remote pair programming, new contributor ambassadorship, and many others that have issues that are currently filed in the Kubernetes/community repo if you'd like to get involved. And that wraps things up for me. Any questions? I'm looking at hands right now. I don't see anything. All right. That wraps it up for contributor tip of the week. And now we go to SIG updates with CLI.
Hi, Paris. Oops.
Oh,
Maybe we can kill that. Sorry. Okay, I'll share my screen. Hi, everybody. I'm Sean Sullivan. I'm a co-chair of the SIG CLI, and I'm here to give you guys an update on what we've been doing in the command line interface SIG. So just a quick overview of our SIG. Most of you know us from our development in Coop Control, but we do have actually a couple other sub-projects under the SIG CLI. We've refactored the Coop Control in order to be able to allow other clients and plugins to use core functionality. And so we've refactored that into another sub-project called the CLI Runtime. And the third sub-project is Customize, which is an experiment to fill in some gaps for some of the functionality in our declarative workflow. And I'll get to more of that development later in the update. So what have we been working on? So we've got several broad areas that we've been that our efforts have been geared towards. The first is extension mechanisms, including plugins and dynamic Coop Control commands. For Project Health, we've made a major effort in order to get Coop Control out of Kubernetes core. And I'll dive into that a little bit more. In order to address the apply and declarative management of apps, we've had several efforts, including integrating customized functionality into Coop Control, as well as a major effort to move the Coop Control apply functionality into the server. And that has enabled a very useful Coop Control diff functionality, which is just coming out now. And in miscellany, we've merged our first charter, and I've got some information on our talks at the recent CoopCon. And so let me dig in a little bit more into plugins. So Coop Control's Git style plugins are now beta. And these plugins are basically, I've given a little bit of an overview here. If you put a binary within the path and it's prefixed by CoopControl dash, then Coop Control, then that's basically a binary that, a plugin that Coop Control will recognize and run. So if you have a CoopControl dash NS, like for namespaces, and you actually type in CoopControl NS, then it's going to invoke that plugin binary. So as I mentioned before, we've refactored Coop Control, some of the core functionality into this CLI runtime repository. I've left a link to that repository so that plugins can reuse this core functionality. And some of that core functionality includes like the resource builder / client and printers. But if you'd like to know more, please follow that link. And again, if you'd like to know more, there's a really good video. The CIG CLI did a deep dive with Maciej Sulik and Juan Vallejo at the recent CoopCon. So please follow that link if you'd like to dig in even further to plugins. And there's also the link for the slides. Finally, I'd like to mention that there's been efforts in order to do kind of a day 2 and day 3 or address the day 2, day 3 problems with plugins, like how do you discover them, how do you upgrade them, and that is the Crew project. And again, there's a link there to that repository. This is in relatively early stages, but you should expect that there will be efforts in that vein going forward. So in addition, we are attempting to move some of the Coop Control commands to make them more dynamic, to basically ask the server for information in order to create these commands. And one example may be that we ask the server for a particular template to fill in for a particular resource. The commands that will lend themselves or that can be implemented in this fashion are, for example, Coop Control create or Coop Control set. This effort is very early phase, and I've included the KEP if you'd like to find out more about these efforts or include feedback. So in addition, as I mentioned, we're moving Coop Control out of Kubernetes core. We believe we'll get much better velocity, and the cadence for building Coop Control actually will probably be different than Kubernetes as a whole. Our first efforts into this. We're actually fairly close to moving package Coop Control, that entire hierarchy of code, which is the vast majority of Coop Control code, into staging, hopefully by this release in 1.14. And that would be the first effort into getting Coop Control out of Kubernetes core. If you want to find out more about this, the umbrella issue link is also given here. In our efforts towards making this declarative workflow with Coop Control better and more performant, and we're going to move the customized functionality into Coop Control itself. And just to give a quick overview of customize, it's allows you to alter template-free YAML. Basically, it's kind of like Kubernetes. It's patching that is Kubernetes aware, and it allows you to keep your YAML in pure form, and it will overlay or patch YAML instead of different approaches, which are some of which are templated, which would change the YAML. And we've been working on Customize for basically a year and a half. And as I mentioned, it's an experiment to address some of the shortcomings in our declarative workflow for Coop Control. And I've included some of the links for the KEPs involved in this particular effort. If you'd like to know more about Customize, I didn't include the link for, there was a couple of talks on Customize at the recent CoopCon, which I think were very good. And I'll add those links later, but you can also follow the link for Customize itself and look at the README. So in addition, this will be actually a major win for Coop Control and for Kubernetes as a whole by moving the apply functionality into the server so that other clients can use this functionalities. The complexity that's in Coop Control, the apply actually has a lot of sharp corners, and that should be cleaned up. This server-side apply should be alpha by 1.14. This some of the functionality in order to put apply in the server side has enabled a Coop Control diff and a server-side dry run, which is already beta. And if you want to know more about Coop Control diff, I've included a link for a blog that got put out 2 or 3 days ago, which I think is incredibly informative. Okay, so miscellaneous, we've merged our first charter. I just wanted to point out that in addition to the standard roles, we added a couple of our own roles, including emeritus lead and another role called the test health maintainer role, somebody who's responsible for making sure that all of our tests are passing and kind of shepherding the test grid to make sure that we're green. And if you want to look at the charter, the link is there. And finally, I've included some links for our CoopCon talks in Seattle. We did an intro and a deep dive. The links are for the videos as well as the slides, if you're interested. As I mentioned before, the deep dive was a deep dive into plugins. And so I just threw this slide in just before the meeting started. Phil Whitrock mentioned to me that we're soliciting feedback from the community about the features and functionality of Coop Control. And if you want to know more about that or be involved in this survey, please follow this link into our email group. And that's the reference links. So that's the end of, if you download these slides, then hopefully you'll be able to follow some of these if you're interested to know more about the SIG CLI. And that's it. Let me unshare this. I wonder how I do that.
Thank you very much, Sean. I can probably bump you off
Am I
too.
still, am I still sharing?
Yeah, I can probably bump you off too. If at the top of your screen, you should be able to hover over, or at the
No,
bottom.
don't bump Sean off. We need him.
Why? No, I mean, I'm talking about a screen.
Yeah, how do we?
Hold on. Hold on. Let me get it off.
Okay, stop share. That's the button. Thanks, Anthony.
There we go. All right. Now, next week, if you are in SIG nodes, SIG API machinery, or SIG cloud provider, you are up for a update. And then that leaves us with our last part, the announcements. Yay! This week, the CoopCon Barcelona CFP submissions are due. That is like 24 hours-ish. I can't math from now. AKA everybody on this call should submit a CFP. Oh no, everybody on the program committee is like, don't do that, no. But anyway, we would love to hear what you have to say. Please submit a CFP. That would be wonderful. Yes, and whoever just put in the note for the SIG sessions due February 8th, if you would like a maintainer track slot, meaning you are in a special interest group and would like to introduce your special interest group to this audience or do a deep dive, that information is in your email box. The SIG chairs have that. If you're not a SIG chair, ask your SIG chair for that information. Get it in ASAP. And the next announcement from Aaron about GitHub the GitHub management subproject and contributor experience.
Hi, everybody. So you may have seen a notification to Kubernetes dev a little bit ago about us turning on a tool we use called Parabolas. That's the thing we currently use today to add you to the Kubernetes org by way of an issue or a pull request so that this process is more auditable and more user-friendly compared to having to mail a random Google group. We would now like to do the same thing for teams. So we sent out a notification, we tried turning the thing on, and we completely blew through all of our GitHub tokens and kind of broke CI. It's a great thing to do on a Friday. I highly recommend it. Friday evening, in fact. So we think we have fixed that. I'm actually still kind of like trying to ping people, so maybe this isn't as formal of an announcement as it should be, but I'm pretty sure we turned it on and things didn't blow up. So if not now, like really, really soon, you'll see a notification to Kubernetes dev that we have turned it on. In our usual style, now we need to actually document how you use the thing. It's probably going to look something like opening an issue against Kubernetes org while we figure out how to streamline the process, and maybe eventually we can get to a world where you PR in changes to team membership that you care about. If you are used to doing self-service with your prow jobs, you know how in the test info repo we broke up prow jobs by SIG directories, so like SIG scaling can change their jobs without having to bug people who are in the root owners files of test infra, and SIG CLI can do the same thing, and they don't have to stomp on each other's jobs. We're going to do the same thing for teams. That seems like a really friendly self-service model. The trick is you got to use that instead of manually adding people to teams via the GitHub UI, because if we are running this periodically, it's going to like roll configuration back to whatever's in the repo, like any good GitOps-based process should. So if you add somebody and then they disappear, that's probably why. So please ping contributor experience. That is the SIG that owns the GitHub management subproject. And please file issues against the Kubernetes org repository. This creates a brighter future for everybody. My hope for the next step in an evil plan is if somebody wants to come help add support for GitHub teams in owners files, so that like Prow could treat owners files the same way that it treats, or it could treat GitHub teams the same way that it treats owners aliases. We could start to have like centralized management of the people in owners files. So you don't have to go change, like if you change membership or whatever in your SIG or subproject owners, whatever, you don't have to go touch like 20 different repos. You change the team via a PR, and then Prow picks that up automatically. that's the bright, shiny future. Needs work to get there, and I'm kind of busy with the 114 release. But we would welcome any and all help. I'm sure if there isn't a help wanted issue for this, we'll try and spell one out. But come and talk to us sooner if you want to help out there. The issue is linked in the meeting notes. I will just roll right on to steering committee updates. And
yes, please. Oh, and by the way, you said that contributor experience thing, like you're not even the sub project owner. You're like, if something's wrong, visit contributor experience. Not me.
Just trying to bottleneck. I've made my contact me about the release stuff, but I feel bad that there are a number of people who are pinging me directly for repo creation, and I am but one of 6 people who have the power to do this. So I want to make sure that I'm not your bottleneck. So full disclosure, the updates I'm about to give you on the steering committee meeting we had yesterday have not been approved by any of the rest of the steering committee, but I am just going to kind of read through our publicly readable agenda from yesterday. New year, new steering committee. We actually got stuff done during a meeting, which is kind of weird. We came to consensus that the product security team as a formal entity should be classified as a committee. I know maybe that's not such a big deal to some people, but since security is really, really important and we want to make sure we're as professional as possible on this, sort of laying down the rules for who's allowed in that and why and how does that fit the governance structure of the project is itself important. This was kind of raised up by SIG Release as they went through to try and figure out what sub-projects they own, and we're like, why are all the security things in our repo? So steering committee needs to approve that and move forward on that, but yay, progress. Another thing that happened is the working group to help migrate infrastructure away from Google and towards the CNCF for operating the Kubernetes project has finally been officially formed. WG Kate's Infra, hooray. I'm an organizer of that, as is DIMS. We have a Slack channel, we have a mailing list, all that good stuff. We even have a project board, and we're definitely looking for volunteers to come help out. We are not yet at the place where it's like you get a Kubernetes cluster and you get a Kubernetes cluster and we're still trying to figure out the correct policy and process for this. So people who are like, I run a sub-project that lives in Kubernetes SIGs and I want some place to put my images or I want some place to put my packages. We would love to host that for you, but if you could kind of come help us build that, you'll probably get it a lot faster than wishing that it magically appears. And some of the boring work that we have to do up front before that is stuff like figuring out the correct process and policy for who gets admin rights to all of this stuff. Other steering committee stuff, we have to review the Code of Conduct Committee's charter. We are behind on that. We are going to kind of be rationalizing or revisiting a number of working groups. We feel like there may be room in this community for yet one more model of group governance, what have you. Call it a user group, call it a support users group, call it a BOF, or still don't know the name. But things that are kind of long running, there are a bunch of people who are interested in something, but they're not actively contributing anything to the project. That's not quite a SIG, because SIGs contribute to the project. And it's not quite a working group, because that's a time-bounded effort that crosses SIGs. The CNCF has working groups, but those working groups are kind of weird and open-ended. So there's a working group about serverless, and there's a working group about the Internet of Things, stuff like that. So we're trying to figure out what model makes sense for that. So if you are running a working group, expect a ping from the steering committee as we figure that out. And I think the last major thing I want to talk about is we want to figure out how to get more participation and make it easier to bring business to the steering committee. We don't want to be the bottleneck. So we are considering opening up our meetings to public participation. So you can come to the meeting, you can ask us questions, you can put stuff on our agenda. Still figuring out the logistics of that. So I kind of don't want to promise anything in a recorded medium and then have to take it back later. But We were talking about ideas like maybe as soon as next week, or maybe every other week, or something along those lines. So look for notification about that to the Kubernetes dev mailing list, because you're all awesome community members and read that every day. I hope. I think that's it from the steering committee.
All right. Aaron, you actually have some questions in chat about how people can get in contact with the working group. Dims. Looks like Dims just answered for you.
Yeah, it was originally called Kate's Infra Team. I have an open issue to rename all the things to WG Kate's Infra, so very, very soon.
All right. Another announcement on that same tip, on that same steering committee tip, the contributor experience charter has now been merged. If you want to take that out for a spin, links in the agenda. If your SIG does not have a charter, ask your chairs why. And a quick plug for mentors. If anybody out there would like to mentor, or if you say that you just don't have enough time to mentor, we have plenty of opportunities for that use case, especially meet our contributors, which I talked about earlier. This could be a one-time, 1-hour commitment for you for the next year that will help reach hundreds. Please reach out to me or the Contributor Experience SIG in Slack. That brings us to our very last section, the shout-outs, which are also powered by Slack, shout-out channel. Thank you to everybody that participates and shouts folks out on a weekly basis. It's a great way to give recognition. First things first, Stephen Augustus is shouting out Josh Burkus for putting together the list of draft questions for the survey that went out for the release team that we mentioned earlier as well. And everyone that was involved in it. Looks like everybody that's ever been involved in the release team, Eeyore, Maria, Jordan, Mady, Aaron, Maria, Ben, Tim Pepper, Alexandra, and Ashwarya. Jordan wants to say all hail Dims for running the zero-length flake to the ground. Awesome work, Dims. Code Ranger, aka Noah, wants to shout out the whole docs translation crew. There's tons of work that's going on right now in Asia. For those that don't know, multi-level different translation efforts that are going on. And he said that a special mention for Adam Dang has put a ton of work into it. In total, the team has merged over 444 PRs in the last 2 months. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that team. Aaron wants to shout out to ACOTS for stepping to take notes for SIG Testing's weekly meetings. We go a mile a minute, and it's much appreciated. I know that team, and they do go a mile a minute, so thank you very much for that. Also, Aaron wants to shout out Nikita for moving the Kubernetes project values to the Kubernetes community repo for more exposure. You can check out the pull in the agenda for that, and for improving our working group docs generated from SIG's YAML. Thanks, Nikita. And then also Nikita wants to shout out Miss Preitz for adding lots of details to the code generator conversion gen docs. Links in the agenda so you can check out that poll. And does anybody else have any last minute shout outs that they'd like to do verbally over the call? We have some time, or any last minute announcements. Otherwise, you get 10 minutes back. All right. I guess everybody wants those 10 minutes. All right. Let me actually look in the chat. Looks like we're all good in chat. All right. And that wraps up this edition of Kubernetes Community Meeting. Thank you so much for joining. We will be back here next week, same time, same place. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Happy Thursday.